In this video, I'm going to be discussing the flat snap and the leg snap. I have already done videos on introduction to pel work, including what makes a good shot and the physics that I'm using, and another video on stance. So if you have not already seen those, please start with those videos. So this is going to be the flat snap and the leg snap. So from my basic stance with my shield foot forward, my sword hip cocked back, bend my knees just slightly, and I'm going to have my sword on my shoulder just right here. And you'll notice I try not to let my elbow go out away from my core, because that again encourages lever action at the rotator cuff, and we want to avoid that as much as possible. So in order to get the stick moving as efficiently as possible, I'm going to use hip rotation to start my shot. So as I discussed in the previous video, it's just gonna rotate here, and if you see where my hip is offset just a little bit, as I rotate my hip, it's going to be just enough to make it go square. I don't need to over rotate more than that, and I'm rotating at the hip, not at the shoulders. I happen to believe that the hips lead everything always. The hips lead going out and the hips lead coming back. So as I throw here, as I complete the recovery, I'm going to start with my hip rotation coming back this way to bring it back. So we're going to use that hip rotation to get the stick moving. You'll notice as I just do that much rotation, you notice my shoulder comes forward just slightly. And that again is generating motion in the stick. That's what we use to get the stick moving at all to begin with. And once the stick is in motion, then everything just kind of flows off the shoulder from there. So the next thing that I'm going to do once it gets moving, right now you'll notice that right now my blade is up in the air, and I want to get this flat for flat snap. I want to get it parallel to the ground. I want to get it parallel to the ground as much as possible, so that when I strike, I'm hitting perpendicular to the surface that I'm targeting. And for that, I want to make sure that the blade is as flat as possible, as long as possible. Because any variation we have off of this straight line is going to bleed energy. If I throw up first and then try to turn it, that's going to bleed energy, because this motion right here, when you're varying off that straight line, is going to bleed energy off the shot. So we want it to be as flat as possible, as long as possible, so that it's going in a straight line out here. And you'll notice as I do this, I'm going to exaggerate the hip rotation, because that's the part of the shot that we actually need to train our body to do, so that we're leading with the hip as opposed to rotating at the shoulder or just throwing with the arm. So you'll notice that I'm going to start with that hip rotation. I'm going to exaggerate that somewhat, and there's this almost imperceptible lag between the hip rotation and the shoulder coming forward. And the reason for that is your hip is pulling your shoulder across, as opposed to your arm or your shoulder pulling your hip. So the first thing I'm going to do once I get this hip rotation, once I get the stick moving, is I'm literally going to let my stick roll off the shoulder this way. And as I do, I'm going to let the tip come around off the shoulder right here. And as discussed in the previous video, once my blade comes parallel to my chest here, once it comes around this way, all of the power that I need to deliver a telling blow is present in my hand right here. I don't have to put more arm behind that to make more power happen. I'm using the properties of the stick, a 2-pound object traveling at a certain speed, generating a certain amount of force, kinetic energy, all that good stuff. And as it comes through, it is going to have the power that I need. And once it gets here, then it's just a matter of where I'm putting it, where I'm going to deliver that to. Your arm is not the power source of the blow. Your arm is the guidance system of the blow. This is just where you're going to where you're going to put it. And I focus a lot on the mechanics of the flat snap and getting that rotation here, because all of my shots start exactly the same way. Especially anything that's going sword side is going to start with this roll off the shoulder right here. So as we roll it off the shoulder and I get the blade parallel to the ground, from here, again, the power is already there, so it's just a matter where I'm going to place it. And so from here, what I'm going to do for the flat snap is I'm just extending it out so that I get the sweet spot of the stick on a target that would represent the temple of somebody who's 6 foot tall. That's how tall I am. And if you were to hit somebody in the head with the temple, right in the temple, with just a stick, and they don't have a helmet on, you're going to at least knock them out. And that's what we're looking for. So we want to make sure that that's the target that we're looking at. I teach baseline stick mechanics. So I'm going to teach it again right at the temple of somebody who's 6 foot tall. I'm not going to teach the temple of somebody who's 6'6" or 5'9". It's just we're going to use this baseline for the basic stick mechanics, and then you make variations off of that depending on where on the opponent that you're fighting. So that's what you're targeting, is that temple of somebody who's 6 foot tall. And so as I put that on there, and the sweet spot of the stick, if I haven't covered this already, is right about here. Out here on the tip, we get range and we get speed, and down here at the base of the stick, we get a lot of power but no range. This is what we refer to as the fat part of the bat in baseball terms. This is what we hit home runs with. It's about a fist length down from the tip of your stick and runs for about another fist length. That's the sweet spot of the stick. This is the part of the stick that gives us the best balance of speed, power, and range. And so that's the part we're going to be hitting with. And I want to put that right on the temple. So right about there. And as I finish this too, if I put my hand so that it's in line with the target, I'm throwing at the target. So I want to make sure I'm going to cross the center line such that as I look underneath my blade, I'll be able to see my opponent's eyes. And that's how I know if I'm hitting the target correctly. And I want to cross the center line with my hand so that all of the power is driving through the target as opposed to stopping at the target right there. So I want to drive through it there. Just like that. For the purpose of Pell work, for the purpose of stick mechanics, I definitely preach a slow and steady method. You'll notice that all of these shots that I'm throwing are incidental contact. I'm not blasting through my Pell. If you throw fast and hard at your Pell, you're going to blow out your elbow before you learn how to actually throw the shot. And for me, the part of the shot that we need to teach our body to do is the beginning of the shot, not the ending of the shot. If you do all of these mechanics correctly, if you start with that hip rotation and you let the sword roll off the shoulder and you extend out, if you do all of this right, you're going to deliver a telling blow. And every once in a while when you get done, it definitely helps to have a Pell that you can hit if possible, so that we can, at the end of it, I can demonstrate what a good shot looks like in full speed. And here it goes. There you go. So if you do all of this correctly, it is going to deliver a telling blow. So moving on to the leg snap then. The leg snap is pretty much the same as the flat snap. The only difference is that your hand is going down. One of the key things about throwing the leg snap, though, is, again, in baseball terms, if I've got a baseball bat here and the ball comes through strike zone right in here near between my chest and my belly button, and my hands have to come down to strike at that ball. Well, if you were to drop your shoulder to reach down for it, you end up hitting a pop fly up there. So we don't want to do that. So the same thing applies for us. We don't want to drop your shoulder to be able to, I'm not going to drop this down here to get to that. you want to be able to start with that same hip rotation, and as the stick rolls off your shoulder, it's just your arm is going down, not your shoulder going down. So it's just going to drive here. The target that we're looking for on the leg for stick mechanics is going to be the mid thigh of somebody who's 6 foot tall. So that's right here. So right about there. The minimum legal target we have for SEA combat is 1 inch above the knee, but I teach a baseline, which is that mid thigh, because if you hit it a little bit lower, then you're still legal, and if you hit it a little bit higher, you're fine too. But if we were targeting it right at the knee, in the beginning stages of PEL work and stick mechanics, there is a much greater chance that you're gonna hit somebody low with that. So just to err on the side of caution, I target the mid thigh for, again, baseline stick mechanics, to teach your body what you need to do to be able to get this. And then as you get into live combat, you'll be able to hit it right where you need it to. But we're going to use the mid thigh as that baseline target. So again, same stance, same hip rotation. When you let the stick roll off the shoulder, and as it comes down, you're going to notice it is kind of difficult to get a good perpendicular line on that. But I'd have to squat down like this to be able to get that. And we don't want that. So we're going to be able to drive this as much square as we can, but it is not going to be perfectly perpendicular. It's just the mechanics and the angles involved in being able to hit this. It'll get it close enough because we're still going to be able to get the energy transfer where the energy is going in that one direction as much as possible. So we can hit this even though it's not completely square. So just going to let it roll off the shoulder, down in the leg. Okay, so that's pretty much it for flat snap and leg snap. Yeah, there you go.